I'm making another clip from like the other day. However, this is going to serve two purposes. One will be the clip itself, as there is information that I think that needs to be heard. But then there's also a second deal, which I think is actually, it's not a bigger deal, but it's just as bad. Has to do with the free speech deal. Okay. Jordan Peterson just came out with a new video, as you've seen. It says 24 minutes ago. And I've been watching it. Clearly it's been on longer than that, because I've watched it for 27. I try to cancel these things. They keep popping up. Anyway, my point is that this has to do with the parental trauma in the world of gender insanity. Well, they're talking about like what parents have to go through, the trauma that they feel, because everybody talks about the individual and not what close people that have to endure the process as well. So with the YouTube aspect, and I'm about to hit play and let you see the bit, but as far as free speech, and like I've, again, 27 minutes into this video, I'm not going to play the whole 27 minutes, but they're making really good points, and I'm about to clip part of this to make my point with that. And they've already, look, I go to like on this video, and it goes away. When I go to, I left a message here, hold on. It says 7 seconds. It's been a few minutes ago. Unknown error occurred. Like, when I went to like the video earlier, it told me that there was this action isn't allowed. The only reason why this happens, I've seen this a very few times before. They've already taken down the video. YouTube is doing its thing with free speech and removing the ability for them to even discuss openly issues. They're not even saying, so far, I've went into 27 minutes of this, and they're discussing the issues that the parents have, troubles that the parents feel. Like, everybody deserves to be heard. And I think that includes the parents. So, whether you agree with them or not, that's not right, YouTube people, whoever the hell is in charge. Quit doing this shit. Like, you don't have to agree with them, but controlling whether in the media what's allowed to be heard is fucked up, and that's why I'm doing this now, because if the full video comes back, I will put the link in it out of respect and so everybody can watch it in full context. But I don't think it's right for them to be canceled. So I'm taking advantage of my channel being small to do this.
And I said to them that as a psychiatrist, I am acknowledging the ordeal, the terrible ordeal they're going through, and that they have experienced and are experiencing trauma. And when your daughter comes home and her voice has dropped and she's growing facial hair, that's traumatic. And when your son comes down the stairs to go to the prom, wearing a dress and heels and makeup, that's traumatic. And worse, of course, there's much worse than those things. When you learn that your daughter is scheduled to have a mastectomy, when you learn that your son is having genital surgery and their kids are going to be sterilized and you're not going to have grandchildren. These things are traumatic and they are losses. And I apologized on behalf, not that anyone from my profession chose me to speak for them, but I decided that I wanted to do that, and I apologized. And I looked at that grid, when you're doing a Zoom and there's a lot of people there, and I noticed that almost, more than half the cameras, 80% of the cameras were turned off. I could only see really a few faces. And at the time, I didn't know why that would have been. I thought maybe, they're in the kitchen or they're busy or
you're probably
really
crying.
And then I found out later on, Dr. Peterson, that their cameras were off because they were crying.
I knew it.
Huh.
Yeah.
They were crying just to hear a professional, a mental health professional, say to them, yeah, you're traumatized. You are dealing with grief, with serious grief, just like the trauma of someone that went through a natural disaster or 9/11, just like the trauma of parents who are told their kid has cancer. No less than that. And in fact, more complicated than that, because your trauma and grief is not acknowledged. It's disenfranchised. And as you know, disenfranchised grief, complicated grief, is much more difficult to live with, to deal with, and to heal with. So when you have a terrible loss and grief, and you can't even share it with people at work, or maybe even your own family, and maybe your other children are endorsing the unreality and are using the new name and pronouns. Maybe even your spouse is. And so some of these parents are living with such deep loneliness in their grief. And I just feel a calling to speak out for those parents and to give them a voice, because they are terrified to be identified, most of them. They, for various reasons, they don't want to be recognized for their beliefs in terms of their profession. They're still hoping that their child is going to desist and come out of the gender confusion, and they don't want their child to be aware that they're speaking out. So when I speak to parents, you have to understand, they're very often in their cars, they're in the basement, they're in the garage, they're in their bathrooms, whispering.
That's messed up.
So you're not speaking merely of disenfranchised grief. So we could define that as someone isolated who's unable to pour out their heart, let's say, to anyone who's willing to listen. You're actually talking about demonized grief, because the understory here is that in our current political and ideological climate, if you dare to grieve about the fact that your child is being pushed towards surgical sterilization by idiot ideologues, then not only is that inappropriate, it's positively morally unacceptable, right? Because apparently this is something that all good thinking people, including parents, should only celebrate. And if you oppose it in any manner whatsoever, not only is that inappropriate, it's positive evidence that you're a bigoted, misogynistic, exclusionary, racist, homophobe, all the satanic adjectives you can possibly imagine are to be dumped on you. So it's worse than mere disenfranchisement.
And that you are the reason that your child's mental health has plummeted.
Right.
You are the reason if your child makes a suicide. It is your fault for not affirming that child.
It's called blaming the victim.
And what I have
in this
in
case,
my book
the victim's the parents.
Is how
in that
advice for parents on how to deal with that. For example, if they have to admit their child to the hospital for a suicide attempt, how to talk with the staff at the hospital about this issue. When the staff is going to sit down with them, the treatment team is going to sit down with the parents and say, well, you have to affirm your child. This is why your child is trying to commit suicide. So I give parents very detailed advice on that conversation that they need to have with the staff at the hospital or with their therapist or at the schools. What I'm trying to do is to provide parents with the tools that they need in order, they're trying to protect their child, not only against the ideology, but against all the institutions that we used to trust, our schools, our mental health, medicine, the field of medicine, hospitals, the list goes on and on. Those institutions that we used to trust, parents need the ammunition and the wherewithal and the confidence to be able to go to them and say, well, hold on a minute. Let me just tell you about A, B, C, and D. And I give them the information that they need. So there is no consensus on this issue. You know, parents and everyone is being led to believe that there's a consensus on this issue of how do we take care of these kids. There is no consensus. There is an all-out war going on a professional level that no one is hearing about because it's not being covered outside of people like...
Okay, I'm going to cut this short because I haven't even watched this full video, and if I don't, I'll probably just keep recording, because like this is how the first 24 minutes has been. Like, it's, to me, I think there's really good content that needs to be heard, and so I'm going to leave it there. But bad on YouTube, and I'll probably put something like that in the title. But yeah, if you do watch this, please share this, because even if you don't agree, if, you know, this gets passed to someone in the LGBT community, whatever, I don't care. Like, parents deserve to be, you know, their concerns deserve to be heard, even if you don't agree with them. So, shame on YouTube for cutting this out and doing whatever the hell they did. Again, if this is brought back, if they, I don't know what they changed, maybe, I will put the full thing. But as far as I know, I think this whole video got canceled because free speech in YouTube. So, I'm using YouTube, but fuck YouTube for doing that.